Hey there, welcome back to another episode of MVP Business, where we showcase leaders who live through their mission, vision, and passion to drive growth, profits, and loyalty. Today's guest is Kenny Harper. He began his journey rocking stages as a musician, but after realizing that he had the talents, but not the business knowledge, he reinvented himself and became a devoted student of business growth strategies. Now, as an accomplished certified advisor, Kenny's on a mission to inspire and empower those with the attitude, the expertise, and the drive to amplify their business by increasing profits through implementing proven strategies and effective systems. These systems have been featured on Huffington Post, Forbes, and business journals, and he's going to share a few of those concepts with us today, as well as other thoughts about the business journey. So thank you so much, Kenny, for joining us today.
Glad to be here and glad to have this time to be able to connect and share something that may amplify the business of someone who's tuning in today.
Awesome. So I mentioned it a little bit that you went down the path of being a rock star, but tell us a little bit more about how you got to where you are today.
It was kind of that path. I was always creative as a kid, always had a passion for just creating things, whether it be music, art, just had that creative mindset. It was always fun. Mm-hmm. When I went to a rock concert, 14 years old, it was Metallica. I was in the snake pit. I was blown away and knew I wanted to have that energy. I just really felt the connection with the crowd. As mentioned in the intro, I got into music. I started playing in bands, recording music, having that fun. But then I realized, there's a lot of starving artists out there, and there's a reason for that. Mm-hmm. They haven't learned the business aspect. And that's very common even outside of artists. People learn their trade, they learn their craft, but they don't learn the business side of it, how to make it profitable, how to make it efficient. So my transition was I was started to need to do the marketing for our band, making flyers and making websites and promotions to promote the band. And then I realized, hey, I can make a career out of this. Hey, and people will pay me to do it. So that's how it kind of transitioned into that. And this, that was a couple of decades ago. Oh my gosh, time flies, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And so I got into the marketing, went to school for it, started working for different advertising agencies, being hired as a freelancer from different advertising agencies and different businesses. And then about a decade ago, I took a plunge and started my own business. When I first started, I was a freelance web designer, and I was making websites. And I knew, again, how to make websites, but I hadn't learned still how to do the business part. Uh-huh. And so I was kind of like struggling to get to the next level, struggling to get paid my worth. And so I became a student of business growth. And over the past decade, I've learned the best strategies, systems, and resources to help people that have the passion, they have the right attitude, the right expertise, and the right drive to get past and amplify their business, get past their sticking points, and do it efficiently. So I believe everyone has their own unique gifts, their own true passions, and if they can tap into that, that's really what can be powerful to put out a message that will make a bigger impact overall.
So you mentioned this a little bit already, but tell me about those particular struggles of you're a web designer developer, your craft, your trade. What were the particular struggles that you came up against that you had to then figure out that now you teach other people those strategies?
So one of the things, there's quite a few things. I'll mention three of the top biggest challenges. Number one is just knowing your worth. So if you're getting paid an hourly wage working for another company or organization, and then you start your own business, sometimes you can feel guilty for charging what your worth is. because you're used to being paid an hourly wage. So I'll give you rough examples. Maybe at the agency, I was making $25 an hour or something like that, which as a, freelance developer, it has to be a multiple of that, maybe $75 to $100 an hour, if not more, because you have other expenses. You can't bill all of your time. You have to make up for benefits and all those different things. And I see that is rampant with a lot of small business owners. They have that challenge of not wanting to charge too much. They feel guilty about it. But if they really don't know the numbers and what they need to charge in order to be profitable, if they're making decisions based on emotion versus their goals and what they really need to do, they're going to run into challenges there. And I had to come to that conclusion and realize that for myself, that you can't just look at where you've been and try to make micro increments. You've really got to focus on where you want to go and take the right steps.
So how do you suggest people go about determining their value?
One of the ways I like to do that is really thinking about the transformation that you provide and thinking about what that is worth for someone else in their business, in their lives. And you've got to really be honest with yourself. Is what you're offering, does it provide a lot of value? Because if you're doing something that's maybe small, commodity, selling a little commodity product, right? Maybe it's hard to charge high-end prices for something if it's not differentiated, if it's not unique. But if you make something that's unique and you elevate its brand, or if you have a service that really provides a lot of value, you can then begin to think about, what would be a fair price based on who I'm serving. I'll give an example. So let's say I'm going to be working with a small business owner who's getting started in their business, and they want to work with me for an hour of my time to help them get past a sticking point. I may charge them a different rate than I would charging a large brand or organization that needs an hour of my time to help them with their sticking point. And somebody look at that and say, hey, that's unfair. You're charging different rates for different people. Well, it's thinking about the value that you're providing that small business owner. And if you give them something that they can afford so that they can make some progress in their business, that's going to help them out, but not nearly as much and at the same scale as a massive corporation. They could make tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars off the same advice. And thinking about that value, not just of the hourly value, but of how that's going to impact their business or their life or their health or their finances, and what that's worth. So it's really thinking beyond the hour. I guess that's the long way of answering that question.
Oh, absolutely. Melvin So, I had on a couple of weeks ago, put it in a way that really impacted me, and the concept of positioning. We're in marketing, you and I, and Melvin, and the concept of what is that end result value, not the value of a single hour. Like I could, like you mentioned, I could talk to you and tell you something that took me 10 minutes, but I know that something and you don't, or you haven't thought about it that way. But that something that took me 10 minutes to tell you could make you $10 million.
Right.
So should I charge you $50 to tell you that? Or should I, what's the value that I provided? Because it's going to, I know that this is going to change your business. It's going to make you $10 million. So I'm going to charge you $1,000 or whatever that it makes sense to create that exponential growth. But if you look at it of, well, I only took 10 minutes well, it's in your brain, it's your knowledge that you can choose to share or not. What's the value?
I love the analogy or the little story where the roofer goes on to fix someone's roof, and he's like, goes up on someone's roof, hammers in a couple nails, comes back down and be like, that'd be $500. It's like, what? That only took you like 5 minutes. It's like, well, it's actually the amount of time and knowledge that it's taken me to get to know what I need to do in that time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, like you're saying, you've taken a lot of time to learn that knowledge. I can't even tell you how much money I've invested in my own personal growth, but it'd be a large figure. So for someone to condense that down and get it into a small little nugget that can help them avoid the scenic route or the more expensive route, that is uber valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I could have done that. Okay, well, first of all, you didn't. And secondly, like you wouldn't have known what material, like, all the things in order for me to do that in 5 minutes. Same thing happens in my business with Vine Collective of design. Somebody's like, oh, that's so simple. I could have done that. Okay, but it could have taken you 5 weeks to make it that simple because you don't know how to do it, right? Apple, Steve Jobs has a quote about, making something seem so simple that it seems like anyone could do it. So clean, so easy, so simple, but they can't. They didn't. Anyway, yeah, I love that concept of value-based pricing as opposed to product or hourly-based pricing. So looking at that end value that you provide, who you're providing it to, what's their long-term result, and what are they able to give you, and what's the value that they provide. So it's okay. You're giving yourself permission to charge people differently. If you were going to give the same speech in front of 10,000 people or 10 people, you're not going to charge the same amount. It's the same speech. Your energy is different, but the value you provide is different, right?
Right. I like this little thing that I'll tell people sometimes, because the second thing, right? Number 2, the law of familiarity. I always have trouble saying familiarity. It's why does it come out of my mouth so weird?
It doesn't feel familiar.
Familiarity. See, when you do it right the first time, it's good to help mess yourself up.
Oh yeah.
So the other thing I get is very similar in relation, is that people sometimes take their knowledge for granted if they're very familiar with it. So they're like, I already know that, right? I already know this. I can't tell you how many times I hear that on a regular basis. Those that some of my clients, they hear it from their clients too. Yeah, these things I already know. Like, it doesn't matter what you know. It matters what you do, right? The actions that you're taking, and more importantly, the results that you're getting. So the distinction I try to make is, if you know something but are not getting the results, then you have a gap, right? You have a gap, and you need to identify where the gap is. There's people that they know they want to lose weight, right? And they know if they want to lose weight, they need to eat less calories and be more active to burn more calories. And then, unless you have some sort of medical condition, you're going to lose weight. People know this, but yet, the US has the highest obesity rate, and people have trouble losing weight. So it doesn't matter what they know, it matters what they're doing, and more importantly, the results they get. So if somebody already knows something, like losing weight, they will hire, a personal trainer to help them get the result, to help them apply what they know and show them their blind sides and simplify things so that they can get the end result. Which takes me into number 3. Number 3, the biggest challenge is people think, this isn't going to work for me based off past experience, right? So they think, oh, this isn't going to work for me. I've tried things like this in the past and it didn't work. Have you ever seen like a Pinterest fail photo?
Yeah.
Which one of the ones that you think's really entertaining?
Oh, So many. I mean, being a mom, I try to look for ideas all the time, whether it's, creating a Valentine's Day box or cake. Cakes are always hilarious because people do them like amazingly well. And then they're like, here's mine.
Right. So I remember like there's a Cookie Monster one out there that's pretty funny, like Cookie Monster cupcakes.
Mhm.
Someone's trying to bake Cookie Monster cupcakes. They see the Cookie Monster cupcakes. They look beautiful online. Someone sees it, they try to do it, and then it looks horrible. And they're like, oh, that didn't work. That's kind of what happens.
And then they're done.
People try things. They don't know the correct way to do them. They miss important steps. They don't get the right result. And then they write off that thing doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So this happens a lot when it comes to business. And what happens when we get into that mindset of like, I know it all, right? We tune out what new possibilities, which can change our reality, which can change our results. Just like kids, teenage kids will be like, oh, I already know this. But do they really know it? And then we look at them and like, oh, you guys are so silly, think you know it all. And then as adults, we still get in that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of thinking it wouldn't work for me, I kind of know it all already, was the other thing that blocked me for quite some time, is because I was a guy and maybe feel confident of some of my accomplishments with the advertising agencies and didn't feel like I could reach out and ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't feel like, if I'm teaching others to do things, or if I'm, helping others, it would be wrong of me to reach out and ask for help. But I'm mentioning that now because people who are tuning in, sometimes we get in that mind frame,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm sure you see that with people that you talk to, where people, maybe they have a good brand, they have a decent experience, and they're like, we're good, we've got this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can always improve, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I remember one of the first restaurants that I did marketing for, they said, oh, no, we will never do a billboard, and we only do ads when it's like for Thanksgiving or something like that, because otherwise they just don't work.
Right.
Okay. So advertising on billboards and newspapers and, all the other ways that you advertise have been around for hundreds of years. People have made millions of dollars, grown their businesses, but it doesn't work? That's strange. You don't think maybe we should tweak it a little bit?
Right.
I think the concept that popped into my head as you were describing the gap between knowledge and
Results.
results, the effectiveness of it. I think about scientists.
Uh-huh.
I think about biologists and scientists who they just don't have that mentality. They can't of, oh, I did this, I tried this, it didn't work, I'm moving on. They'll spend entire lifetimes working on one challenge, and they'll tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak until finally they get the Nobel Prize. Like, you don't just like wake up and go, aha, I know how to get the Nobel Prize.
Right.
Like I just figured it out all of a sudden. It's a slow, methodical process. And I think one of the things, I don't do this, so I don't want to like claim that I do everything right, but one of the things that I envy about engineer and scientific minded people is that when they make those tweaks, they note them. Mm-hmm. They note them. Mm-hmm. And then they watch, it's like when I cook like a grandma, like I add a pinch of this and a dash of that. But I know a friend of mine who cooks and he's like, oh yeah, I did this and I changed and I added a teaspoon more. And so I wrote that down on my recipe. I'm like, well, first of all, you wrote it down. That's you have a recipe? But I think business is the same way. Like if you have a recipe, if you have your processes and you have your recipe, and when you find and you're looking at your processes and you think this one isn't working quite right, you like totally throw it out? Or do you say, let me add a pinch of this or a dash of that and write it down and then see time, how it changes things.
That has been the game changer. That's the linchpin that really has set businesses who are kind of stale and stagnant to being able to amplify.
Mm-hmm.
Is the focus on the most important things that really drive results, and then staying focused on making small adjustments in a few different areas that have a big impact on the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible to see just how much power focus can bring to the table, because everyone's so distracted by all these different things going on. And this year's been even more distracting. We have all this technology changing, all these different apps, all these different ways you can market. And so people are kind of like getting like the flight of the bumblebee. They're all over the place. They're doing things sporadically and getting sporadic results.
Mm-hmm.
Some are looking out and managing to even do well, even though they're being sporadic, just because of their industry, of their market, or the credibility from the past. But where things get much better is with that focus. And that's where really we've been helping people implement the profit growth formula as a way to help amplify their business.
Absolutely. So I love that, the profit growth formula. I see a lot of people who assume that you have to step on the gas or put more money into something in order to achieve that profitable growth. But as you are describing, that the profitable growth is the small adjustments over time to the right areas, not necessarily a stomp on the gas or getting investment or spending more money.
And in fact, you can be making problems worse if you don't have things dialed in and you're throwing money at it, trying to fix it, working on the wrong problem, just like you were saying with the ingredients, right? If and I'll take a step back, because I laugh, because when you're talking about the restaurant with the billboard saying, "Oh, that doesn't work," it's if there are others in your industry having success with a particular medium, it's usually not the medium, it's usually the approach. It's a missing ingredient. So to write it off could be holding you back. I ask people with, direct mail. I'm like, oh, direct mail, it's waste of money. It doesn't work. I've spent thousands of dollars running some direct mail. I'm like, what was your strategy? They're like, well, we sent out cards to people. It's like, what were on the cards?
And who are the people?
It's our logo. And we had our prices of our services on there. Like, that's really not a strategy. You're just sending out advertising, which can be like shooting to try to find a target, but you might land something, but it's not really a solid strategy, right? So the moral of the story, it's not the approach more of the times, it's the strategy behind it, the focus, and the continual focus on improvement.
Yeah, and I was going to mention, like with the direct mail, like, oh, you sent one postcard one time, so
Right.
now they know you're there. Do they trust you? Do they fully know what you do? Did they happen to be out of town that day?
Right.
The concept of, just also being in front of the right audience at the right time, at the right frequency to become familiar and trusted.
I like the
And
frequency.
and again, it's a recipe. It's all a recipe, right? That just needs to be watched and tweaked.
So it's an easy tip. And sometimes for people like you and I who are really dialed into marketing, it seems like, oh yeah, that's fairly basic. But I continually find that a lot of people who aren't dialed into marketing find some of the really basics really helpful, because it's not their wheelhouse. But thinking anytime you're putting out some form of marketing, thinking what's a small step that someone could take that moves them forward in the relationship. Because if, let's say they're doing, someone's putting out direct mail, I'm thinking of the roofer that was talking about direct mail didn't work for him. It's like, is someone necessarily wanting to buy a roof as soon as they receive your direct mail right then and there? but could you do something that gets them to raise their hand? Potentially. And even if you got a small percentage of people to raise their hand, now you've got a small percentage of people that you can continue to market to, because eventually they will need a new roof.
Mm-hmm.
How many times do people not market to their contacts in a way that will earn their business when the time's right? And I want to pick a bone with an industry for a moment, and they're going to hate me for it, but I love you guys. Realtors, notorious. I can't tell you how many realtors throughout my career out networking have given me their business card. I've given them my business card, and they don't follow up at all. They say, if you want to buy or sell a home, call me. What is going on there? So what are your thoughts about that? What do you think would be helpful for a realtor or somebody else in professional service to do if they're connecting with someone?
Yeah, well, I want to say unpaid shout out to Luisa Morrow, Marathon Real Estate, because she is a realtor that I met through networking years ago, probably 15 years ago. And she followed up with me. She put me on her mailing list, but she followed up with me when we first had lunch. We had lunch. I felt like we were friends, and we did become friends. But her relationship with her customers is very different than the here's my business card with my face on it. Here's my yard sign with my face on it. I don't think she even does that. She does have a beautiful face, so I think it's on her business card, but she follows up. She has lunch or coffee. She puts you on the mailing list. The mailing list talks about industry trends, city trends, what's going on in the housing market. She sends out football calendars and things that she thinks her customers might be interested in. She gave me a pie, all of her customers' pies for Thanksgiving. She really gets into the relationship with her prospects and customers. And this is something that you have on your website as well. And we should talk about the retention. Right. So she sent me a letter that was signed by her on the 5-year anniversary that I bought my home. Now, most people know that most people move every 5 years. So she said, hey, congratulations on being in your home. I hope you still love it. Just yada, yada. I was really happy to be, to put you and your family in that home that you love. Then she called me and she said, hey, do you still love it? Mm-hmm. Do you want to, if you're looking to go somewhere else, let us know.
I think
that's my long story.
No, but that's great. Now I'll have to shout out to Wendy Griffiths of Better Homes and Gardens in Jacksonville, because I dog on real estate professionals, and I've worked with several, and they're great people. But I think, and it's any service industry, just passing a business card is not going to help out. It's building a relationship. Shoving someone into your newsletter subscription that talks about your business is not a good way to go either. Right. Wendy does very similar things. She hosts a lot of events and get-togethers, gatherings. She also, reaches out, and when she sends content, it's more like, what you could do to improve your garden or your home, or, it's Better Homes and Gardens, right? So really more about the person, their lives, than so much about maybe the market, because the market, if they're not in the market, then they'll tune it out. But I love the examples that you gave as well. And I think anyone who's tuning in could think about how can they create content that's helpful for their audience. And I just want to mention one of the things that bothers me is when people are doing newsletters, and what you get from their newsletter is so droll and so boring. I want to ask them, would you sign up to your own newsletter? Would you read it? Because if it's not interesting, if it's not entertaining or not helpful, then people aren't going to open it, or they're they're not going to really get that information.
Yeah. I like to talk about, especially newsletters and social media, where it's about relationships, retention, and more personalization. Nobody wants to go to a party where the person is talking about themselves the whole time. They
Right.
want they want to be talking to someone who is either asking them questions or giving them valuable information. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like your realtor friend, if she sends out like, oh my gosh, this is what's in season right now to be growing, whether it be vegetables or flowers or whatever, or you know, this is the flight of the butterfly, you know, these are the types of flowers that butterflies like, or whatever it is that the individual person
Mm-hmm.
would like to hear and learn from, and not thinking about it as mass demographics or my opportunity to sell to you all the time. You're developing a long-term relationship with an individual. It's I love it and laugh when a large company says, "Do you do B2B marketing?" I'm like, "Yes." Do you ever talk to people? Like, is it not a business to, like, everything is a business to consumer. Every single business has an individual or set of people that has to make a decision. You are
Mm-hmm.
not just marketing to a department, the marketing department, the accounting department. You're not marketing to IT people who only care about IT. You know, you're marketing to an individual who has their own interests and needs and expectations. You're always marketing to a person, always.
It's easy to forget. It's easy to forget and kind of get caught up in the numbers because it's the other side of the equation. You've got to look at numbers as well.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can kind of get in the middle
Mm-hmm.
where you're paying attention to the relationships, you're moving them forward, and you're making sure that that's working in the numbers. Now you're cooking with hot sauce. Because the other fun thing is to be very social, but really not move people anywhere forward. I know a lot of people that get a lot of engagement on social media, and you would think from the outside, like, wow, these people are really doing really good. But when I talk to these people, it's like they're really not doing that great.
Mm-hmm.
And they're challenged.
Think also about, what problem do you solve? What problem am I solving for this person?
Mm-hmm.
The balance, like you're saying.
So I think that's a great thing to think about and keep in mind. It's people to people, create relationships with people. And you mentioned a phrase earlier that I really liked. It's about frequency.
Mm.
And if you put out the right frequency, you're going to attract the right audience. Going back to, amplify your business, rockstar professionals, all about putting out the right frequency. There are a lot of talented people out there. They have their unique gifts. And if they put out the right frequency, just like a radio channel,
Mm-hmm.
then they're going to attract people that are interested in what they're putting out.
Mm-hmm.
If a radio channel was playing, reggae, rap, salsa, country music, hardcore music, it would be all over the place, and it would have trouble really building an audience because it's putting out mixed messaging. But if they really know who they're trying to attract, they put out the right frequency, they'll attract the right audience.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a really helpful to know who it is you're talking to and that value, as you mentioned, that you're providing.
And how they want to be talked to. So that's part of the frequency as well. It's the voice
Mm-hmm.
of your business. And I think especially small businesses forget about that voice and how important it is. And that it's the energy, the frequency, what you say, how you say it, how often you say it as well. Like you said, we're like, recipe is the theme of the of this conversation, but voice is something that, large corporations like, Coca-Cola has marketing down. We know that's not a problem, but we also, and they have their demographics, they know exactly who they're talking to. They are consistent from year to year what their voice is. When you have a small business, the voice tends to start with the voice of the owner, because they're writing all the content, making all the choices. And then at some point they hire their niece or somebody to take over their marketing. And then it takes on her voice. You might be saying the same things or similar stuff, but there's always a filter through, through the person. It's kind of like the news. There's always, as unbiased as you want to be, there's always some sort of filter, but the voice changes completely. And that confuses the audience and doesn't send out the right frequency of energy and doesn't affect the right audience. I was talking to someone right before I started this conversation, and their question was, can I say these things on my website or social media, or am I going to offend someone? And my answer was, do you want the customers who will not be offended by what you're saying? Are you comfortable with repelling the people who will be repelled by it? Is that the voice that you want to put out there? And I think as a marketer, as a company, it is important to know your voice, know what you're willing to say, know who your audience really is, so that you can determine those guardrails of, if my company was a movie personality, what voice would they have? Is it feminine? Is it masculine? Is it strong? Do we take political stances? Do we say shit? Do we, do we go all the way and say fuck? Do we, what is it that we do that, what is that voice? And like, I just said that. So if somebody listening to this goes, oh gosh, I don't want to listen to this, like, fine, don't listen. I'm okay with that. But I won't say it if I'm not okay with that. You know what I mean? So what are those guardrails, and what is the voice? What's the tone? And that will attract those types of customers or repel those types of customers, especially feminine, masculine, and, how political. Do we make political jokes, especially where social media comes in? Do you empower your social media intern to make political jokes? Sometimes it's okay if that's your brand.
And we go again to the conversation of polarities. Is that even a word? Polar opposites. Okay. On one end, I've connected with people who are trying to get a voice for their brand, and they're very timid because they do not want to offend anyone or push anyone away, but almost to the point where they're so trying to serve everyone, they really aren't putting anything out there that distinguishes who they are. They're trying to serve everybody. There's no focus. And it's like, well, if you try to serve everyone, you end up kind of like serving nobody.
Right.
On the other end of the spectrum, we got some people that they're probably shooting themselves in the foot by maybe taking a little bit too hard edge in some of the things that they may really find that they have strong opinions on. But I don't know if they've really weighed the decision on that. And maybe they have, but I'm going to think that probably they haven't thought of that. And to your point, you could make a decision. You can make a decision, do I want to put this out there, whether it's political, and this is what I'm referring to. You're a business owner. Are you okay with putting that out there, knowing that that's not only going to go to maybe your friends and your community, but it's also going to impact how other business owners and people perceive you. And that could work to your advantage, or it could work against you, but at least be aware of that and then make a decision.
Yes. And on that, the business owner's personality or voice may not be the personality or voice that appeals to the audience that is is the ideal audience for your brand or for your company that's going to be the most profitable, the most consistent over time. So that's with choosing a logo, your voice, color palette, all of that. What's going to, McDonald's didn't choose yellow and red because whoever founded McDonald's just really loved those colors. They did psychological research to determine that that is going to entice people to be hungry.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's another thing to consider when it comes to the messaging that you put out there. Talk to me a little bit about loyalty and your thoughts, and I don't know if you have any strategies around maintaining customer loyalty.
So part of that really goes into the framework that we implement. It's the value journey framework that looks at how you're going to attract prospects and seamlessly and subtly guide them to become customers that pay, stay, and refer. So what you focus on grows. So if you want to have customers that are loyal, that are advocates, and have good retention, maybe even have promoters of your brand, you've got to put focus and attention on it. Sometimes we can get so forward focused, we forget to look back and make sure that we're taking care of the people that helped us get to where we're at now.
Mm-hmm.
And I could admit, along my journey, entrepreneurial journey, I've been guilty of that.
Mm-hmm.
So forward focused, all these great things are happening, and then not giving the time and attention to some of the past clients the way I initially did, right? But I think once people kind of go through that and then they suffer the consequences of that, they can either come to have learned their lesson or they continue on the same goofy behavior. I learned my lesson. I realized that the number one reason most businesses lose clients is due to perceived indifference.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a follow-up. There's not showing that you care. There's not looking out. There's not connecting with those people.
Mm-hmm.
So I've made it a point. It's something that we've set as a goal. We track it regularly, and we're in contact with all of our clients and past prospects on a consistent basis. And that makes a difference. It makes a difference when you are showing that you care, you're delivering value, and you're putting them first, right? It's not about, I'm just only going to show up when I'm billing you or if you have a problem or if I'm trying to sell something. It is,
And I'm not waiting for you to ask.
right. I'm showing being proactive, continuing to provide value and finding ways to give you a better experience along the way.
Is that follow-up or touch point personal or indirect, like a marketing newsletter or a letter,
I'm doing personal
Mm-hmm.
personal follow-up. I think it's an important component. There are sometimes I've done, I do leverage some tools of like a newsletter or some things to do a mass notification. So there are some benefits of doing that, but to really connect with your prospects and clients and hear from them, because when you can provide value, show that you care, they're going to be better advocates. If you let them know what you're working on and who you're looking to connect with, they could be promoters or referral partners. And a lot of times they'd be willing to do that if you're continuing to give them value and give them the tools and resources to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I connect with a lot of different businesses and they'll tell me, hey, look, we've been in business for 10 or 20 years. We don't get a lot of reviews. Sometimes there's hardly any, and we don't get referrals. I'm like, do you ask?
Mm-hmm.
Do you make it easy for your customers to do that? No, but they can. I'm like, they can, right? They can. What if you made it a point and made it a goal to improve that, and you started tracking it and you empowered those that you serve to leave reviews or to make referrals. What could that do for your business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like, how many times have you been to a phenomenal restaurant, thought, oh man, I'm going to leave a review for sure. 2 weeks later, you're like, oh man, I never left a review. Well, it's too late now. Whereas on the flip side, if you stay at any Airbnb, you're asked at least 5 times how you felt about it. And
Right?
they're not pushy. They're just like, hey, we're just, by the way, this is the last time that we're going to ask you. Oh, just this one last time. We're going to ask you. And each time they make it more and more simple. Like the first time, they're like, if you want to write a review, write a review. And then by the end of the like I think 2 weeks later, they say, was it great or not? So there's all these different tiers of giving your feedback.
Remember that thing I was talking about earlier, the law of familiarity? Good Lord. That it's easy that sometimes we know things, but we aren't necessarily implementing them. And that was when I was guilty of myself. I'm like, I'm telling all these people to get the reviews. I'm watching them do it. And then I haven't been doing it myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I started putting focus to it. And within a short window of time, I went from a handful of reviews to over 55-star reviews, simply by putting out the ask, saying, hey, this would be helpful. I provided value to you. This is be helpful, because there's a lot of noise out there, and there's a lot of people that will sell you something. They don't deliver the result, and they leave people frustrated. And by you leaving a review, you're not only helping me, you're also helping other people who are looking for help know that I'm a trusted person who's genuine, proven, and can get results. So making sure that you ask and guide people and make it easy for them.
I think the other end of that is being honest with yourself when you receive not optimal feedback.
That's
so if
good.
you put a survey out there and you get a unsatisfactory review, I'm guilty of this. I used to say, yeah, but that guy was kind of a jerk. Like he came into it with as opposed to like, yeah, that guy was kind of a jerk, but maybe I didn't handle it and I amplified his jerkiness.
Right.
Maybe what else, how else could I have handled that? Or was that company not a good client for us? And if so, how can we change our marketing, our voice, our whatever, to not get more of that? If we're getting a bunch of that, I mean, if it's one, it's an anomaly, whatever, but like really look at it and be honest. Was that me? Was that, it's like when you date someone, you could be like, yeah, obviously that guy was a jerk because he whatever. Or you could look internally and say, did I do something? Am I attracting all these jerks? Whatever it is, like really looking and saying, and I think that's really true to say for businesses. If you feel like all of your clients are jerks, you're attracting jerks. Like if people are not thankful for what you're doing, then it's either your process, your product, or the way that you are communicating with them that brings that out. So looking at all those levels, and when you receive feedback, really being honest with yourself about it.
I love that. Take responsibility for it, because if you blame other people for the challenge, you can't fix it. But if you take responsibility, right, then you can say, well, what can we do on our end to improve this? And you're the captain of your ship. So you've got to be able to take the responsibility and take new actions to get new results. I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely. Take new actions to get new results. I feel like everybody needs to write that down.
Yes.
One of those things that you may know, everybody knows, of course you have to change, but it's, if you've been dieting for a year and you're not losing weight anymore, you need to change something, right?
And by the way, I really love your business and what it does. I'm a big fan of, really the branding and the experience. That was one area that earlier on in my career, we're putting more focus and attention to that. We realize it's a huge component of being successful is having that strong brand and experience. We've kind of shifted our focus now, and it's really where we've been putting our attention is the the profit growth amplifiers,
Mhm.
and really just helping people identify, the 5 areas in their business that if they just, number one, know where they're at, right? You got to know where you're at. And then once you know where you're at, you can then identify how you're going to improve each of those areas. And when you put focus and attention, you take new action to achieve new results. That's how you change. That's how you change. So it's all about taking action. You're tuning in. You heard some different nuggets of awesomeness. Have a wonderful host with a charming personality. But the challenge would be to take one new action and get a new result. Is it too many times I see people tuning in, they listen to things, they hear them, and they don't implement. So amplifiers implement.
Absolutely. So if you took notes, if you wrote something down, pick one thing to take action and implement, and then watch it and tweak it over time. Thank you so much, Kenny, for sharing all of your time and insight. It's rock on.
Yeah.
It's been so much fun, and we've had a great conversation. I feel like there are things that I know I need to implement as well. Like those reminders, this is what I know, but this is what I need to actually take action on or find the gap to between what I know and what's actually going to improve my business and my customer relationships.
Actually, like we were saying earlier, it's that humility we've got to have, every one of us, right? Every one of us, we got to have the humility to say, you know what, I can't see my blind side, so I've got to get fresh perspective, and like someone like yourself to help a business or brand to look at their brand, their message, the experience that they're providing, because they can't see those gaps. That's why they call it a blind side. You can't see the frame if you're in the picture, right? What I do with my businesses, shameless plug alert, I do the profit amplifiers review, and you can go to findmyprofits.com. It's findmyprofits.com, and get a free guide that will give you the 5 profit amplifiers. And then you can just rate where you're at right now and get some clarity on where you're at and where you want to go. And if you need some fresh perspective, or if you need some help amplifying in a particular area, that's how I help out. The other thing I'll promote real quick, and then I'll wet my lips, is just I also have a podcast, Growth Amplifiers. You'd actually make a great guest on Growth Amplifiers. It is just interviewing people with the right attitude and expertise and drive that help others amplify their business. And I appreciate the time to share this and connect with your community.
Absolutely. Say that website one more time, because I know I always get stuck in that, like, oh no, scramble for a pen moment.
Right. Thank you. So the first website was findmyprofits.com. And the second website is Growth Amplifiers. So growthamplifiers.com, that's the podcast, and connect in, tune with other rockstar professionals.
Awesome. Well, I would be happy to be a guest. I think I've really enjoyed this conversation, and would love to talk more.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Kenny.
Thanks.